Welcome to Universal God Message of Peace, and I am Lee Weissman, and that is Lale Tuncer. And we're here together every week to talk about things that matter. That's a good way of describing it. And today we're going to be talking about beauty and the importance of beauty, seeking beauty, experiencing beauty in a world that is sometimes not so beautiful. So I'll kick off with a thought. There's a comment in the Talmud that says that beautiful furnishings, beautiful smells, and a beautiful wife, obviously it's talking to men, so it could be a beautiful spouse, right? Expand the mind. So what does that mean? That means like when there are times when we feel more expansive and times when we feel less expansive, times when we feel kind of closed in on ourselves and tight and restricted, and other times when we feel expansive. When you go to the ocean, right? You go to the ocean, you see that beautiful, broad, expansive ocean, or if you go to the mountains and you see the sky, right? You feel expansive. And beauty has the ability to do that for us. We see something which is beautiful and something inside of us expands. We smell something beautiful and something inside of us kind of expands and opens us up. And that experience is really important to being a human being. That's my start.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing those words and thoughts. So I have a question. Is all type of beauty good? Does it always lead to goodness?
No, nothing always leads to goodness. I mean, listen, anytime we engage the senses, okay? Anytime we engage the senses, that input, right, can be used in all sorts of ways, right? I mean, if I can go to the Louvre in Paris, right? And I go to see the Mona Lisa, right? I go see Mona Lisa. So I can look at the Mona Lisa and I can just enjoy the beauty of it, or I can think to myself, I want it. Give me, right? And I go grabbing the Mona Lisa, right? And I try to steal it off the wall. Well, I mean, both are responses to beauty, right? Right. One is one's an emotional response, and one is a greedy response. And so when we have a greedy response to something, we have a lustful response to something, or we have a jealous response to something, then then we take that beauty and we turn it in a bad direction. And so
You're saying that beauty can trigger off feelings of feelings that can then lead to sin or something selfish, or it can trigger off feelings of awe for our creator and bring us closer to seeking higher truth and wisdom and understanding.
Our creator, or all, and also all in other human beings when it comes to looking at, listen, when we look at when we see the beauty of the creation, right? If I go and I stand at the edge of the Grand Canyon, or if I look out, my window at the birds or the spring greenery around my house, that's appreciating my creator directly, so to speak. When I look at art, when I look at art, I can appreciate the creator also, but through the creativity of human beings, right? To appreciate that human beings have the godly ability to be able to create and to be able to create beautiful things.
Yeah,
So
exactly. And there are some things, for example, there might be a piece of art that somebody looks at and decides it's beautiful. There might be somebody else that looks at it and decides it's not beautiful. But is there a type of beauty that nobody can argue about, that we all would agree is beautiful, and what is that type of beauty?
I think that I think, well, first of all, I would say that in general, you're very right. I think in general, beauty is extremely subjective. You know, you see art. I I have a brother-in-law who was an art collector, and we have very different taste in art. There's no question. And there are things that he loves, and he will gush over them as being absolutely beautiful. And I have absolutely, they don't do anything for me. Okay, that happened. There are things that I love that he wouldn't love, and I think that's normal. I think there's a beauty of character. I don't know. It's a very intangible kind of beauty, and it's not a physical beauty. I don't think we experience it by the senses exactly. But I think there's a beauty of character that is hard to argue with. That when
Mhm.
people see it, they know it.
So what is that? Tell us more about that beauty of character.
I, I'm not sure. I'm not
What
sure.
do you think what do
I'm
you
not.
think it, from an Abrahamic perspective?
Well, it's funny. I was just thinking about Abraham. So, Abraham in the Torah, Abraham is having his wife has just passed away, right? In the story, his wife has just passed away, and he wants to get a burial place for her. He wants to get a
Mhm.
burial place for her. And this is in Al Khalil in Hebron, right? Currently in the West Bank. And he's sitting there with a leader of the local tribe, the Hittim, the Hittites, and
Mhm.
named Ephron, and they're discussing this thing, and he says, "Listen, I want to buy a plot for my wife. I want a place to buy my wife. There are these caves over here. I'd like to bury her in the caves, and he said, I'd like to give you, pay top dollar." And Ephron Hachiti turns to him and says, I don't want to take your money because you are a Nasi Elohim b'tochenu, because you are a prince of God among us. A prince of God among us. Not a prince of God over us,
Mhm.
right? But a prince of God among us. So to me, I don't know, like I don't know how to put into words what that would feel like or look like. But that kind of grace where somebody looks at you and says, you are a prince of God among us, right? You're not over us. You're not better. You don't think you're better than us, right? But your behavior reflects your relationship with God.
Mhm.
That would be what I think of as the beauty of character. And I think that that's hard to argue with. I think
Mhm.
it's hard to argue with. I think that when you know, there's, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
I'll say it anyway.
I think yeah, I know what you mean. So it's sort of
The things
emulating the
that we know it when we see it, you know, we know is it years ago there was a debate in the United States Supreme Court about pornography, right? They're trying to define pornography. And they spent hours, these poor Supreme Court judges, right? Spent hours and hours watching this stuff, right? In order to come up with a definition. And finally, at the end of it, they said, it's, well, you know it when you see it, right? And there are certain things which are like that, that they're very hard, it's very hard to pin down. And if it's like that on the negative side, right? If
Mhm.
it's like the negative side, then there's something like that on the positive side. And the positive side, we can't always define exactly what that beauty of character is, but we experience it.
Perhaps we could try to describe it by, perhaps it's something that brings us an inner peace. So if something brings us to sort of an inner peace and makes us feel connected with our creator and our source of life and enables us to be who we are who we are meant to be, and sort of feel the oneness within our diversity, then perhaps anything that brings us to that, we could maybe that's what beauty is.
Yeah.
Maybe. So perhaps, it's and obviously if we look at this Abrahamic scripture, we've got the attributes of our creator, and that, we say that to obviously the essence of God from an Abrahamic perspective is something beyond words, beyond definitions, but the beautiful attributes that he sort of has chosen for himself
Mm-hmm.
and chooses to reveal himself to us through in this his worlds of creation, are attributes that we can relate to. And so my question is, what are those beautiful attributes that is it that when we see that in another person, or when we experience that attribute in another person, that's what makes us see that or experience that beauty?
I think number one is compassion and mercy. When you see a person who really deals with the world in a merciful, compassionate way,
Mhm.
I think that's an undisputable kind of beauty. I think sometimes we also see it as physical beauty. It's interesting. The line between physical beauty and spiritual beauty, I think is sometimes blurred. I think sometimes there are people who are just kind of physically beautiful. They have symmetrical features, right? You can nowadays you can um, all these things can be, there are algorithms that can can figure out exactly what the perfect, the perfectly beautiful human face is in terms of symmetry and things like that. That that does happen, but I think there's also something else where we see a light that comes from inside of a person. I think that's mostly comes from a combination of serenity, right? A combination of serenity, a kind of unity of purpose, a wholeness, right? We say God is one, right? When we are one, right? When we are of whole purpose, and when we're sort of working, when all of our parts, so to speak, are working together as one, there's
Yeah.
a real beauty in that. And I think that creates a kind of light. Sometimes say, hear the expression in Arabic, right? The person has a nur, right? They have a kind of light. I think that we experience that. We experience that people have a kind of light when they're wholehearted, when they're merciful, when they're compassionate, and when they're seeking the good of other people. When somebody is looking out for your good, and their concern is really for you, and when they really are seeing you, that also is, I think, very beautiful for people. You
Mhm.
know, even a person might even appear beautiful to you because they get you, right? Because they really care about you and they really want to know you. I think that's very powerful.
Beautiful. Lovely. I agree with that. Yeah, I think I would say the same. Um, I think sincerity and being able to connect, even if we don't know that we're doing it, but just to be sincere, to speak the truth, to practice what you preach, to do what you say, keep your promises, and be kind, forgiving, respectful, loving, humble, grateful, all of these attributes. I think that, um we say that, God is most grateful. I mean, God is most, all yeah, God is appreciative. He's, he's um all the beautiful attributes that we can describe as beauty. I think he's the most of all of those things. And I think the more we try and emulate that, then the better it is. And the more we allow others to emulate that, or the
Hmm.
more we see
And to
that in
help that.
people, so the more we try to get that out of others, or invite people to those ways, is something nice and try to see the light in the darkness, I guess, and see the light and beauty and wisdom and everything.
Yeah.
See, I think there's beauty in everything. I think everything is beautiful. So I was in the car today on the way back from the beach, and so in the car I've got my mum, my dad, and my three girls. And I was thinking about our talk. I was thinking, okay, so what are we going to talk about? Beauty. So I asked everybody in the car. I said, right, I want all of you to describe beauty. What do you think is beauty? So they all took turns and said a couple of words.
Hmm.
And so my mum said a few things. She said, shiny, happy faces is beautiful. That's what she considers to be beautiful. And there was a rainbow actually, and she said, oh, and the rainbow is beautiful, all the
Hmm.
colors, it's like one light and the different colors of the rainbow. So I guess that's like diversity and seeing the oneness within creation. Um, and then my daughter Amelie, she said, what did she say? She said, empathy and compassion, mum. That's what beauty is, compassion. And then my other daughter Miriam, she said, I said, Miriam, what do you think beauty is? And she said, beauty is beauty. This is it, just beauty is beauty. That was her answer.
Uh-huh.
Whatever that means. And then Heidi's answer was she said kindness is
Uh-huh.
beauty. And then my father's turn, he said, well, I think everything is beautiful. I see beauty in everything because anything that makes me, whatever we look at, we can think of God and so it's beautiful. And I think that was a very lovely, lovely thing to say. Um, and oh, he said something else actually that was very, it was lovely. He said to me, beauty is when we don't try to change the creation of God. So anything which is actively trying to change the creation of God
Hmm.
is not beautiful. And then he said something else. We were listening to some Turkish music in the car
Hmm.
because my parents are Turkish and they like Turkish music. So and my dad loved this music and he was like, oh, and another example is this music is just so beautiful because it just sounds so nice. And it makes me just think, wow, what a gift this person has. And it
Hmm.
makes me think, praise be to God. And then we were looking at so that made me think actually, yes, the music, I think with music, so I asked him about that. I said, what in music makes you think it's beautiful? And he said, if it brings me, if it moves me. So he said, anything that is beautiful, it moves you
Hmm.
it stirs something up inside of you.
Hmm.
And so that was quite interesting.
Yeah, I
Um,
think that
I
that's a
agree with that. So with
beautiful
music,
observation.
yeah, so with music, like if everybody's playing an instrument and they're all at different rhythms or they're all playing the notes are clashing and it's just hurts your ears. It doesn't come across, it doesn't sound beautiful. And with everything, with our smell and our hearing and our sight, with all of our perceptions, we can experience beauty. And because it's just something that just makes us it brings us a pleasure, I guess. So something that brings us a pleasure and a joy, I would say is beauty. But there's, with flowers, um,
I'm with your daughter. Beauty is beauty. I'm
beauty is beauty. I would
perfectly.
love that one. I know it was great.
Yeah.
I was like, is that all you can say, Miriam? Is there anything else you can use to do? She said, no,
No.
beauty is beauty.
Yeah. So while you were having conversations with other people about this topic, I was having a conversation with myself. So as and it was so my conversation with myself was like this. I thought to myself, okay, so there are things in the world that I find ugly. So how do you see the beauty in something which is ugly? Is there a way to see the beauty of something ugly? So I came up with a couple of strategies. Do you want to hear my strategies?
Please.
Okay. So one was you have to get closer.
Yeah.
You have to get closer, right?
Be
So
dangerous, can't it?
yes, it could be it could be dangerous. Just be careful because like if it's, for example, a rhinoceros, you want to be careful with that. But is to get closer. Sometimes when you get closer to something, like you see something in it you didn't see before,
Yeah,
right?
definitely. Yeah. There's beauty in everything. It's just
Right.
some places it's more hidden. So, and the places that appear the opposite of beautiful, that's where it's the most hidden. And that's where you need to dig deeper, I think, to find it because it has to be in there somewhere.
Well, when I was 9 years old, uh, um, I was in a museum. I was in a museum, and I used to go to a lot. And this guy kind of poked out from a door in the museum, and he said, "You want to see something really cool?" And I said, "Yeah." So he takes me into this room, and he has an electron microscope, and he says, "Look at that." So I look in, and he said, "What do you think that is?" And I said, looks like some kind of a landscape. It's the moon. I had no idea. It was the tongue of a snail. It was the
Wow.
tongue of a snail. And it was this incredible structure. Now, if I'd looked at that snail, I would not have been impressed. Okay. It just looked like a slug, you know? But it was just amazing. So looking up close. So then the other is to like looking far away. Sometimes like, so if I have a Persian rug, right? And I look at it up close, it's not going to be very impressive, right? It's just going to look like, a couple of colors here and there. There's going to be a coffee stain. There's going to be, there's going to be, dirt and whatever else if I look up close. But if I pull away from it, then I see the beauty of the rug. So that's sometimes you have to
It's a great analogy, yeah.
get,
Actually, yeah, that's beautiful. And then sometimes I think we can get deceived by just like, something might appear beautiful from a distance. And the closer you get, you discover it's not so beautiful.
right.
And that is like the deception of this world. So the things that are vanity and, things that are temporary, things that give us a temporary type of pleasure and
Yeah.
enjoyment, I would say appear beautiful on the outside, but inside they might be a bit rotten or, and it's all, but even in that rottenness, there is beauty in that as well. If we really, because, there's wisdom in that. And I think for me, I would describe beauty as wisdom, actually. I think the more we seek wisdom, the more we will see beauty because there is wisdom and truth. So truth and wisdom in everything. And as you say, God is most compassionate, and everything is there's compassion within it. So even sort of anger and what we see as punishment, we might experience as a punishment or a harshness in this world. Within that, there is compassion, and within it, there is mercy. Within it are all the beautiful attributes of our Creator within everything that exists. And it's just that sometimes I think it comes across as not so beautiful. But I think it's within us. We can choose it depends on how we choose to see it really.
And we can get
Yeah.
closer and we can pull back and we can look from another direction. And, and we can see it in some other way.
Yeah.
Um,
But I think I would say when I say even within the rottenness in the let's say we got a rotten apple or something, it looks like a beautiful apple on the outside, but then you bite into it and it's got a maggot inside or it's a bit rotten and it's not so nice on the inside. So as I said, even within that there's beauty, but actually no, if you could choose, you wouldn't choose to eat that apple if you had a choice between that apple and one which was beautiful on the inside and outside, and it looked nice and it tasted nice and it didn't have a maggot inside it. You would choose the one that is sort of it is
yeah,
what it says it is. So I
yeah,
think something says it's something, and then you come up to it and you realize that it was just a mirage or a deception. that can, I think we have to be careful not to
Yeah.
fall into that trap in this world,
Yeah.
because we're surrounded by all of these temporary pleasures and our selfish desires, our anger, our lust, our envy, our greed, our vengeance. All of these things might bring us like a temporary pleasure, and it's a bit like sugar. Having too much sugar, it tastes sweet, but actually it's not so good for us. um and it's a lie, and it's like a deception, or it's like the Quran describes, there's a parable in there about the thirsty camel, which
Mhm.
thinks that there's water somewhere and goes up to it, and so it's like sometimes we're drawn to the pleasures of this world, and it's like a mirage, and we think it's water, and we get there and we realize it's not actually. It was just
Right.
a.
There's an expression in Spanish. I'm trying to remember the expression
Mhm.
in Spanish. It means something like looks good from a distance. It looks good from a distance, but not everything that looks good from a distance, all the glitters is not gold, and it's possible that we can be attracted to things that are not good for us, or that, inside of them are things that are not good for us. And so you do have to be cautious about that. I mean, there is kind of, you know, there
How
is.
how do we, how would you advise people to be able to, a great skill would be for us to be able to look at something and distinguish between, is this good or not? Is this true beauty? Is this
Yeah.
really
Yeah,
beautiful, or
that's
is it?
called that's called living. I think that's a, there's some challenges we get to dodge, and that's not a challenge we get to dodge. I think we don't get to dodge that challenge, just have to deal with it.
Is
If
it
there are going to
something
be
that you're
things,
saying, mm,
you have to kind of, as you know, it,
experience?
right, through experience, say, realize the things that are good for you and not good for you. There was a Rabbi Noah Weinberg, who who gave a seminar. He said that the point of the point of religion is to give you pleasure. And everybody looked at him and thought, this is what are you talking about? Because especially in our religion, there's all these restrictions. You can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this. Well, that's not pleasure. I mean, that's obviously not. He says, and he said, no. He says the purpose is to give you joy and pleasure and happiness. He says, well,
Mhm.
but how can there be all these restrictions and joy and pleasure and happiness? He says, well, your assumption is that if you were to experience everything that you want, that you would have joy and pleasure and happiness. But that's not the case, right? If I want to eat an entire chocolate cake, or I want to eat this, that ceases to be a pleasure, right? If I eat the apple with the maggot in it, okay, that ceases to be pleasure. So not everything that I want, right, is going to be a pleasure, right? What's going to be a pleasure is if I eat to moderation, right? If I eat to moderation, if I have relationships that are ruled by love, if I have, those are the things that are going to make me happy and bring me pleasure and bring me joy. And the
So there's
restrictions,
like
not
yeah.
restrictions, but they're ways to guide you in the direction of using the things in the world in a way that's going to actually make you happy,
So are
right?
you saying that the point of religion is supposed to be to restrict ourselves to a certain point from the things which,
Let's not use restrict.
bring us
Let's to
which
guide us guide us in directions of moderation. To guide us
the
to
thing
guide
is, though,
us.
there are things which are forbidden, and obviously religion,
Yes.
people associate religion with something that's forbidding. So this religion says you're not allowed to do this, you're not allowed to do this. But what I'm trying to say is, I think what you're trying to say is maybe that through those forbidden things, you're creating like a vessel for to be able to bring you to a true type of lasting type of happiness,
Right.
which so we're restricting that which is led by our ego and feeds our ego and is fueled by our ego, in order to make room for the true beauty, which is God's beauty, and to flow through us, for that to flow through us, so we can be like vessels for true beauty maybe, and to be able
To make a place to be able to experience that, right? To make a place to be able to experience that. You
yeah.
know,
So
if your life is filled with, if your life is filled with, with, okay, give an example. If your life is filled with selfish relationships, right, which is very easy to do, right? If if everything, right, I would say that one of the things that religion says, okay, religion teaches is that your relationships with other people should be based on compassion and love. And if you were to have a whole bunch of relationships that were a bunch of relationships with your family, with your friends, with your spouse, with everybody else that are not based on compassion and love, there's not going to be any room in your heart to be able to experience the beauty of God, right? There's not going to be room. There's no place, right? So in order to make that, in order to make that space to clear that out, we say, okay, listen, you're going to have relationships that are going to be ruled by love and compassion.
So what you're saying is true beauty is when we sacrifice our own will, which is our ego, in order to fulfill the will of our creator.
Right. And that way, by the way, I think sometimes we talk about religion in the wrong way. We talk about religion in terms of what we lose, so to speak, right?
Mhm,
But really, we should be talking about in terms of what we gain,
mhm.
right? Because by gaining that space, by gaining that space, by gaining the vessel, so to speak, to be able to experience those things. So then I'm able to look out my window, right? And I see the spring, right? And I'm not just seeing the spring, but I'm also my heart is open enough to be able to see, the beauty of God outside my window, and to see the beauty of I'm looking at a picture that was actually painted for me by a friend of mine, right? And to be able to see the beauty of the creativity of our other human beings, and that's possible when we sensitize ourselves to that, and to be able to see the beauty in good character when I get to see you. So so
Baruch Hashem, likewise. I think, yeah, I agree with you. I think the only thing that I don't see as beautiful sometimes is when, um, so everything that God has created, all of nature is so beautiful, and I don't think anybody can really argue with that. You go out into nature, and it's just expression of God's beauty and his, just beautiful. And I think it's only the human being. So even animals who be selfish, they are still beautiful because they are, at least it's not a selfishness out of arrogance. It's a selfishness, but they're still being true to their nature, which is still
human
going.
beings can create
Human, yes.
unbelievable ugliness, there's no question.
That's it. I think human beings are the only ones that can actually, wherever there's free will, and wherever we have free will and willingly, when we know that something is, going against our nature, and we go against our own nature to do the opposite, I think that is what I don't find beautiful. And I have today, like, I don't see that as beautiful, but I'm trying to see the beauty in even that, by saying that even that, because I think everything, the Quran says that everything and everybody, every creation worships God willingly or unwillingly. So the ugliness comes from doing it unwillingly, but still within that ugliness is a beauty, because it still serves our creator, but in a not direct type of way, because it does it through free will.
So
And
next week we should talk about free will.
okay.
Hey, next week we should talk about free will, because the fact that we can, so the bad news is that we're able to create incredible ugliness. The good news is we're able to create incredible beauty. And
That's
next
it. The
week,
beauty that we can create is higher than is the human beings have that potential to create ugliness, but they've also got the potential to reveal the beautiful attributes of our creator, like compassion, and actually that can only really happen, I think, if we have free will. So because of our free will, we then have the potential to be, higher than angels, I guess, if we really use it
are you
really.
leaking into next week already?
Sorry, I'm sorry, I'm going off on
Leaking into next week already. Okay, let's not talk about free will now. Next week we'll talk about free will. Meanwhile, everybody should take care and they should work very hard, very, very hard to make sure that they bring some beauty into the world, bring the beauty of your character, bring the beauty of your creations. Don't forget to keep your eyes open to see the beauty around you and the beauty of the people around you, especially. And remember, beauty is beauty. That's what we learned
Beauty
here.
is beauty. That's a great,
Beauty
great
is
way.
okay, guys, until next week.
Thank you all. God bless you all. Let's try and see the beauty in each other always.
That's
And yeah, God bless you.